Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me this week. So let's talk about this question that I get often. Will this person change? Are they going to be different in another relationship? Are they going to actually heal? Are they going to get better? Are they going to treat this person better than they did me? And I want to talk about change because I want you to really understand what it means to fundamentally change. This is not just about wanting to change. This is actually about doing the work to change. Let me just start with this. I am always so hopeful that people will heal and change, but I'm also realistic to understand that in order to change, it requires a ton of work. Now, there are a lot of reasons why people won't change and they can't change and they just don't ever change. And here's the first one. Change is incredibly hard to do, and it's something that takes an extreme amount of effort and patience and time in order to actually overcome and to do something different. Now, change is something that is beneficial, but it's also something that's really painful. And until you are fully ready to open up your own window towards your past, towards your emotions, and really owning it all, and that's not an easy thing to do, to be able to look in the mirror and say, okay, these are the things that are going on with me, and this insecurity and this fear and the way I approached you and the way I communicate, and I have a tendency to manipulate, and I am narcissistic. For someone to be able to do all of that, that's a lot. That's a lot, and most people don't want to do that kind of work. The times where people actually do change, it's because they've hit enough pain in their life where it's really just undeniable. It's undeniable that something is going on inside of that person, in you, right? Where you're able to really acknowledge, like, wait a minute, like legit something needs to change because I'm going through so much right now and I feel so uncomfortable and in pain and I just can't deny it anymore. And this is where you start to kind of like self-reflect and say, okay, what am I doing wrong in my own life, in my relationships, for me to be in this much pain? So when you hit that window of pain, all of a sudden the floodgates open and the window opens and you're exposed, and you really go through that kind of like awakening process where you're in that dark night of the soul and you're in this period of like real severe pain, sometimes depression, because you can't deny anymore that the reason why you're suffering is because of your own self. So someone who is narcissistic, for example, and not even just narcissistic, most people in general can't acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that they're actually the problem, because then that means that they actually have to do some work to change the problem. Now, chances are, if you're watching this, you are a person that has done self-reflection. Maybe you don't completely own everything yet, but you have the ability to take a step back and to say, wait a minute, what am I doing wrong here? It also means that you've done some pretty deep, serious work, and you understand that any amount of progress that you have already made has taken a lot out of you. It takes time. It takes mindfulness. It takes being able to say, that's my stuff right there, and not putting it on anyone else, even when you so badly want to, because you want to make that person out to be the problem. You have learned through doing this type of work that that's not going to actually get you the results that you need. So most people don't open those windows. Most people don't expose themselves. Most people don't take accountability, because that means that they are then pointing the finger at themselves and they have to now own it all. And no one wants to own it. The only time we actually own it is when we hit enough pain. But if I'm so used to being in a habit of not being able to self-reflect because maybe I have a personality disorder, maybe I'm incapable of that kind of like acknowledgement and taking accountability and responsibility for myself. If I never learned that growing up, then I'm not going to do it as an adult. I'm just going to want to surround myself with people that enable my behavior. And when I'm around people that don't, I'm going to dismiss them, or I'm going to leave those relationships, or I'm going to get out of those friendships. Because really what those people are doing is they're actually challenging me, and I don't want to be challenged. I want to be in my comfort zone of I'm not the problem, you are. That's how most people live their lives. It's way easier to flip something and make you the problem and manipulate you and gaslight you into you thinking that all of this drama is all of your fault than me actually taking a step back and raising my hand and saying, oh wait, I guess I actually had a part in this. Most people don't want to do that kind of work. It's way easier just to flip it and put it on someone else. So that's one of the first reasons why most people are not going to change, because change is painful and change is extremely hard to do. If you are in a habit of living a certain way, if you've never acknowledge any of the things that are going on inside of you, you understand, guess what? Buckle up, because this is not going to be fun. It's great and amazing once you've actually grown and healed and moved through all of that pain and got to the other side. But when you're starting this, you are looking at a storm in front of you, and you need to walk through that storm, and you're doing it naked and all by yourself. All of the work is all on you. A lot of people don't sign up to want to do that type of work. And sometimes the only reason why you yourself have had to do that type of work is because someone else has caused you a lot of pain and hurt you in such a way that you couldn't deny your pain and your suffering anymore. And that caused you to kind of open up the window. And the minute you opened it, there are times where you wish you would have just closed it, but you can't. Once you open the window, it's done. And now you have to do the work. You have no choice but to walk through that storm, because guess what? You can't turn around and go back now. Another huge reason why people just don't change is because, like I said earlier, they are surrounded by enablers. If they have always been around people that have enabled their bad behavior because those people themselves are dysfunctional as well, and they don't take accountability and they don't hold themselves accountable for the things that they're doing wrong in their own lives and their own relationships, and they would rather just sit on a pedestal and judge other people, or sit on a pedestal and make everyone else the problem where they're never the problem, then guess what? If I'm surrounded with those people, if those are the people that raised me, quite frankly, I'm used to being around people that are going to support and enable my bad behavior. So when you come along and you begin to challenge me, you are now the minority. You are not the person like I've always had in my life that thinks I'm amazing, that thinks I'm God, that's not going to hold me accountable, that's just going to deal with whatever it is that I'm willing to give you, and they're okay with tolerating it. When you're not that person, they're not going to change, because to change means that I have to do something different than I always did. And I don't want to do that kind of work, especially when I have a group of people over here that aren't going to even make me do any of it at all. So I'm going to just discard you and fling you off to the side and not change for you, even though no one can really change for you, but we'll get into that later. I'm not going to do any of that work. Why? Why would I want to do any of that work when I can just surround myself with people that are okay with me the way I am, which is unhealthy. So when someone's raised by people that are dysfunctional themselves and they never taught this person boundaries, they never taught this person how to own their mistakes, never held this person accountable for anything at all, guess what? That's who you're witnessing today. You're witnessing all of the dysfunction that that person went throughout their course of their lives, perhaps childhood, teenage years, young adulthood, etc., where they just always either surrounded themselves with these types of people, they sought them out. The problem just continued to happen over time. So there was no change needed to happen because I'm not in any pain because I'm getting exactly what I want. When you're talking about changing a specific habit, like we're not talking about changing the character of a person, when we're just talking about habitual habits that we do, that is actually easier to change than when you're talking about the character of a person. So if I'm in a habit of doing something, I have to first be able to acknowledge that that habit exists and that it is actually a habit and it's not part of my personality. So once I can acknowledge that, okay, I behave in this way or I do this thing and it's not beneficial to me, and the only reason why I do it is because I've done it for so long that now it just feels comfortable to me and I don't want to be that way. So there has to be a huge amount of acknowledgement before a change can actually start to really come into play, where someone can actually start to do something different than they had done before. If that doesn't really happen, that acknowledgement never happens, the person doesn't want to change, the person doesn't see the benefit of actually doing any kind of work whatsoever, then it's really not going to work, because what's going to happen is that old habit is going to just pull the person back to who they used to be. I think a huge reason also why, especially when I work with couples where one's not happy, the other's not happy, and it's just this back and forth that's going on. A lot of the reason why, especially in marriages and relationships, change is really hard is because the other person's coming with a laundry list of all the things that they don't like about you. And when there's a list of things that you have to change about yourself, while change is hard, you can't change everything all at once. It has to only be one small thing at a time. I think a lot of people, in terms of habits and in terms of really communicating and working better in relationships, they put too much on the table, where you're just setting yourself up for failure, because no one's going to be able to change key fundamental things about themselves in one go. I always tell couples, work on one thing at a time. Like, set your partner up for success. That means that all the other things that are on that list that you want to see change or be different about this person, you have to completely let those things go. Do not think about them. Do not bring them up. Do not hold resentment towards the person when they do them. It has to only be one thing that we're focusing on at a time. I think a lot of people, when it comes to change, they really underestimate how long it actually takes to change core things about themselves. Now, this could be within yourself, where you put these really huge expectations on who you want to be and how quickly you want this change to actually happen, rather than giving yourself the grace and the patience that you need to want to keep working on this change. If you feel like, and if the stories are really negative and unsupportive, then I'm not going to feel like change can actually really ever happen. And so if that happens, then I might as well just give up now. And especially when it comes to weight loss, I find a lot of people really struggle with that, these unrealistic expectations that they put on themselves, rather than learning how to be their own cheerleader, where they actually want to continue to work, if not work harder towards their goals. In terms of someone changing, the story is, why didn't they change for me? The story really comes from this lack of self-worth, of feeling enough, and honestly, logically understanding that no one changes for you. The only time people change is when they themselves want to change and you have nothing to do with it. And I hear a lot of times from people that will say, look, I feel like I'm always in relationships where people are learning from me, where I'm the person that comes in and helps them to see all of these negative things about themselves, and then they go on to the next relationship and they become this person that I actually wanted them to be. You have to also remember that you're never really seeing, you're not that person, you're not living in that relationship, so you're not really seeing through clear lenses what's really going on and who that person actually is. And here's the thing, we're always growing and we're always evolving, and even if someone in your past has, quote, changed, right, and you think that they're now this amazing person, even though you still have absolutely no idea because you're not in a relationship with them, so you don't know what they're like day in and day out. You're only seeing outside things. I think that's important to remember. But let's just say that they actually do change. Guess what? So have you. So as you were growing and maybe you evolved past that relationship, then this person started catching up. Guess what? You kept growing too. So you're never going to be compatible with that person, even if they actually did do any work on themselves, because you yourself are changing and evolving as well. It's just something to really remember, because we get caught up in these stories about how this person is going to be so different and how they have changed just because you see a picture on Instagram or something like that. And you really got to keep yourself in check to understand that change is really, really hard. And most people don't change. And the reason why they don't change is because, guess what? They themselves have to actually do the work. So I hope this video has helped you understand change and why change is very hard. It's not absolutely impossible, but it definitely takes a very, very strong and secure person, because guess what? They have to expose themselves. And when you're dealing with someone who's very toxic and unhealthy and whatever, narcissistic, doesn't even matter, we don't have to put a label on it. Most people don't want to change because they don't want to do that kind of work. And unless you go through enough pain where it's undeniable and you have to do it because you're in such suffering, most people don't sign up to go through suffering. So if they're not in any knee deep of pain and they have found enough enablers around them to support their bad behavior, then they're never going to change. And all they're doing is finding people that will continue to put up with their bad behavior, whereas you probably were not. So I hope this video has helped you. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next week.